Well, 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 well. A very, very, very of warm welcomes to you. It's Kasim. I hope you are doing well. I hope this week has been treating you okay. In fact, really, I hope life has been treating you well in general. Um, I've written a new book. And I wanted to share a little bit about what motivated me to write the book. I wanted to share a little bit about, over the next sort of 10, 15 minutes, a little bit about some things that I've been reflecting on regarding this book and regarding suicide in general. The book is called I Want to Kill Myself, a conversation with an unknown friend about suicide and the edge. It's quite a sensitive subject to talk about. It is one of these subjects that, as a society, we don't really talk about very much. But I wanted to write a book on it. And as many of you will know, this was not a book that I actually originally wanted to write because I have a what I call my 10-year vision, which is a list of 10 books that I've been wanting to write. All of the books are built onto one another. And many of you will know that my mission and my purpose and what I want to spend the rest of my life doing is helping 1 million men to start the first two steps of reaching their higher, fuller expressions of themselves, starting on the path of self-development, starting on the path of healing, of transformation, starting on the path of going through a metamorphosis, and whether redeeming themselves, whether discovering themselves, transforming their body, their mind, their spirituality, their psyche, whatever it may be for them. But my mission and what I really want to do and want to spend the rest of my life doing is I would like to spend the rest of my life realistically trying to impact 1 million men. And my thing is to help them with the first two steps of that journey. I don't want to help them on stage 6, 7, 8, 9. That's not my purpose. What I want to do is help them on the first two steps on that journey. Where do I go? How to start? And so in that pursuit, this was not one of the books that was on that list. However, what ended up happening was that multiplications of different things have happened that have kind of forced me to have to write this book. And I'd like to talk a little bit about that and explain to you why I decided to write a book about suicide and the edge. So as many of you will know, I have had quite a dark life. I have had quite a turbulent childhood growing up. My biological father died at a very young age. I myself tried to take my own life. I have been in debt. I have been arrested for drink driving twice. I've been tasered. I was an alcoholic. I used to be a thief. I used to be a liar. I used to have massive drinking issues and alcoholic problems. I used to earn really good money, but I really struggled with friendships and managing boundaries. I believe and I've discovered that I have quite an addictive personality. And because of all of these things that have happened, and I'm really just touching the surface as to some of these things, I have really had a lot of pain in my life. I've lived with pain for long, long, long periods of my life. And I haven't talked to anyone about those pains, mainly because when I was growing up, I grew up in a household with quite a number of my siblings. And in all honesty, I grew up in a very Islamic family. And in my family, we just didn't talk about emotions. We just didn't talk about mental health. It just wasn't something that really was on the radar. In fact, I didn't really know what mental health was until I decided to go to a counselor, only because so many things were showing up around anger, rage, around frustration. I was becoming ill all the time, and I didn't really understand why I was becoming ill. And one of the things that I've come to realize about the mind, about the body, about the psyche, is that if you refuse to deal with something, whether particularly it's around surrounding emotions, surrounding loss, surrounding grief, surrounding anger, surrounding sadness, the feelings of inadequacy, unworthiness, feelings of conditions of worth where you have to be someone in order to feel loved, if you do not deal with those and you neglect them and you don't allow yourself to transform and you don't allow yourself to grow and to develop, the body has this really funny way, and I may be talking for myself, but I've observed this in other people, where it will basically take over and tell you through various means or various extreme means to start dealing with some of that stuff. That might look like a panic attack, that may look like chronic illness, that may look like anger, that may look like addiction. It may look in a variety of different ways, and it will present itself in a variety of different ways depending on who you are, depending on your background, depending on your story, depending on how you're brought up, depending on your personality, through loads and loads of different things. And so a huge amount of why I decided to write this book was because there are so many guys, because this book I specifically wrote for boys and guys specifically. There are so many of us lads who are struggling, who are in pain, who really we've done what I did when I was younger, which is try to delay living, try to postpone everything, particularly around what I call motivating myself. So I used to say motivational quotes every time I would fail or I would struggle with something. I would give myself a motivational quote. But I have come to realize that just because you motivate yourself and you talk to yourself in a positive way and affirm yourself, it doesn't get rid of some of the things that you're experiencing. You cannot avoid process simply by using motivational quotes. And I think a lot of us lads, we use motivational quotes, or we use all kinds of coping mechanisms like and defense mechanisms like displacement, projection, and we use logic and rationalization in order to not deal with ourselves, in order to not deal with the pain, the hurt, the disappointment, the conditions of worth that we're living our life under. And that counts, it compounds. And my observation of life has been that when you ignore yourself, particularly how you feel, particularly your needs, or maybe even you allow people to define who you are, or you allow them, not purposefully, but because of low self-esteem, to continuously keep violating your boundaries, over time what ends up happening is you end up sick. You end up depressed. You end up losing who you are. You lose sense of your identity, of your purpose. And it can send you into a really, really, really dark spiral, where you do want to end your life. And then on top of all of this, us lads, we do then also have things like we don't want to appear weak. We don't want other people to judge us. We don't want to burden other people with some of the things that we're experiencing. And as I talk about in this book, there are going to be a lot of people who don't want to be burdened by your situation. They don't want to be burdened by the heaviness of your story. That's just the truth, right? There are going to be a lot of people who don't care. But the great thing about life is that there are a lot of people who also do care. And one of the things that I talk about in this book is understanding that help doesn't always have to come from the people who know you. Support and help does not have to come from people who are your blood. Support and help can come from people who are not your blood, right? They can come from strangers. They can come from volunteers. If you look at the most remarkable people on this planet, many of them, the support and the help that they've given to others, those people who they've given it to have not been their blood. They've not been people who are directly linked to them, but they found that they have this gift, the ability to heal, the ability to tell stories, the ability to teach somebody a skill in order for them to support themselves or to help them in some way. And that is what they've used and utilized in order to support other people, but they haven't been that person's blood. And so one of the key messages that I'm always pushing in this book from the very beginning all the way to the end is help exists. Help exists, but you have to ask for it, right? And I think this is the difficulty, which is really partly why, the main reason why I wrote this book. The thing is, people can't help you if they don't know that you need help, right? And part of why I wrote all of this is, look, every year in the UK, we have about 6,000 people who die by suicide in the UK. That is not just a statistic, that's human beings, that's brothers. And the vast majority of those people who die by suicide are men, right? We know that um, uh, if around 70% of the men who die under the age of 65, their death, the cause of their death is they die by suicide, which to me is absolutely insane. And it's one of the main motivators as to why I wanted to write this book, because that number doesn't need to happen. And the thing is, this is not just statistics. That's somebody's uncle, that's somebody's brother, that's somebody's cousin, right? We know from some research that's been done by, I believe, Glasgow University, that the amount of people who are affected by just one single death where somebody dies by suicide is around 134 people. So that means that the chances of you and me bumping into somebody, whether it's a family member, whether it's a friend, a colleague, who died by suicide is very, 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 very high. And that doesn't need to be. Now, let me specifically put a quote into this. The people who I wrote this book for are not people who they have been diagnosed with a mental illness. That's not who I wrote this book for. I wrote this book for the individuals who are on the edge, who have been disappointed by life, who've been let down by life, and who've experienced, and this is one of the notes actually that I wrote down here, that the vast majority of the people who end up dying by suicide, they have experienced a proportionately, hold on a minute whilst I get this, because I wrote it down here and I want to articulate it in the right way. Those that die by suicide experience a disproportionate number of negative life events than those who don't. And that's just the truth. That's just the fact, right? I know that you may have gone through a lot in your life, or are going through currently a lot in your life, and you're suffering, and you don't want to burden other people, because one of the things that we know about those who die by suicide is usually it's not that they want to die by suicide, but they want the pain to end, right? They don't want to be a burden to their family members and others, and they really just want that pain to end. Suicide, one of the things that I wrote down here is that suicide isn't usually due to one reason, but a multiplication of different reasons, right? People who score high in social perfection are much more likely to feel defeated, which leads to a key factor in depression, which is entrapment, right? And one of the other things that I will say this to you is asking somebody about whether they're suicidal or not, or want to take their own life, will not lead them to go and take their own life, right? And also, I wrote down some things here. There's 7 things that can lead someone to take their life within 24 hours of it occurring. So here are those 7 things that I wrote down here. By the way, this is based on research, not me. In part on me as well, because of course I've been really interested in the subject. So a final romantic rejection, which is basically anything like divorce, a breakup, not having access to their children. The second is catastrophic financial failure. So that's anything like bankruptcy, loss of a home, an asset. They've lost assets through divorce. They have built something. Thought they were going to go to the Olympics, and then they I don't know, something happens and they can no longer go to the Olympics. Addiction. The other one is chronic, relentless mental illness, sorry. So that's anything like depression, panic attacks. What about this one? New medical illnesses. So that's things like cancer, the person's in an accident and then is paralyzed, bullying. And the last one here is threat to the person's core identity. So that means, you know, something like someone's religion, their sexuality, they've been betrayed by somebody, that sort of stuff. And so it isn't just, when people do take their own lives, it isn't just because of one thing that causes them to take their own life. It's usually because of a multiplication of different things that lead them to get to that stage. But one of the biggest predictors that we know of somebody who is going to die by suicide is self-harm. And so there are these signs and there are these factors, high risk factors that do increase the chances of somebody taking their own life. For example, we know that if you are born into a family where there's been a history of suicide, that you're actually much more at risk of dying by suicide. We know, for example, that if your significant other passes away, that also is one of the high risk factors of somebody taking their own life. But my point being is, guys, that help exists. Help exists out there. There are people, and I say this, and I spend a huge amount of my time in this book telling you this, that there is absolutely help out there, and there is different sorts of things and strategies and interventions that can support you and help you in alleviating the pain. This isn't the only way out. And you might be listening to this and you're like, Kasim, you don't understand, you don't know what I've been through. And I don't, right? You may have gone through a lot of pain, and you may have been, literally, your life, it has been catastrophic, devastation after devastation, right? The anger, the rage, the resentment, the self-loathing, the feeling of unworthiness or wanting to get revenge, all of these things will come up for you. But what I'm saying to you is not that you're not feeling those, but you don't have to feel those forever. I remember that one of the significant things that changed my life was when I heard Jim Rohn say that if you will change, everything will change for you. Things don't have to remain the way that they currently are. Human beings have this thing called the dignity of choice. We have the ability to make something of the pain, of the destruction, of the injustice, and the disproportionate amount of suffering that we've endured. Suffering can be transformed into something higher, into something more, right? Whether that be through contribution, whether that be through serving other people, whether that be writing a book. There's so many different ways in which we can take pain and actually continue to live with it or transform it in a way that can actually be productive and can help you in some way as well. It's out there. And what I would do is encourage you to absolutely seek the support of a professional if you are in crisis right now. Call the emergency services if you're in crisis and you need to speak to somebody straight away. But my point being is, I wrote this book for you. I made it so cheap online so that you can go and get it, right? The book is there for you. You just have to go online and get it, and it will give you, I hope, as I say in the book, this is the description that I have. This isn't just a book, it's a companion on your path to self-discovery and healing. It emphasizes the importance of seeking help, both internal and external, right? And there is work. Look, what I offer in the book and what I talk about in the book is you don't have to suffer for the rest of your life, but it's going to take work. And if you are prepared to do the work, which, let's be honest, if you're at the bottom of the pit and you are in darkness, the only way to get out of hell is walk through it, right? But it's hard work. And if you are prepared to do the work, which you should be prepared to do anyway, because do you know what? You're so used to pain and being betrayed, and you're so used to being unseen and not feeling worthy that this should be a piece of cake to you anyway. Right? You want to be like the phoenix and rise from the ashes of all of that has gone before you and embrace your destiny and embrace the future, which is very much available to you. One of the other things that I also talk about in this book is understanding that not everybody is the right person to go to talk about your mental health, to talk about your trauma, to talk about your abuse, to talk about your neglect, to talk about your story. Your spouse may not be the best person to go to and speak to about that particular subject, but there are people out there who can hear your story, who are trained to be able to sit with the heaviness of your material. Yes, there are going to be a lot of people who can't handle and sit with your story. But for example, somebody like me who's a trained counselor, my job is to sit with really heavy material and sit with people's stories. So I would just encourage you to go get the book. It's up to you. You don't have to get it, But I offer you this as an opportunity. That's the way that I see it. You don't have to do it. It's your life. You can do whatever you want. In fact, you're going to do whatever you want regardless anyway. But yeah, check it out if it's something that's useful for you. I'm always keen to hear other people's stories. So if you found this useful, please reach out to me. Please reach out to somebody who can support you and help you. But I really appreciate you listening. Thanks. Bye for now.